What's up guys, it's James Allen, the Out-of-State Investor, and today we're going to talk about 5 different ways that you can start investing in real estate with just $10,000 or less. Now with prices going up so much, along with lenders often requiring at least 15 to 20% down on an investment property, it can be really hard to get started investing in real estate with less than $25,000 or $30,000 out of pocket. So with these 5 ways, you're going to learn how you can utilize them to get into real estate and get started investing, even if you haven't saved up that kind of money yet and you only have $10,000 or less. Now before I get started, do me a favor and support the channel by smashing that like button, and if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell to watch more content like this. And with that said, let's jump into it. Alright, so I'm going to jump right into this list, and starting at number 1, the first way you can get started investing with less than $10,000 out of your pocket is by doing house hacking. Now, what exactly is house hacking? Well, house hacking can mean a couple of different things, but in this situation, what I'm talking about is buying either a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, which is a 2-unit, 3-unit, or 4-unit building. You live in one of the units and you rent out the other units, collect the rent to pay off your mortgage payments, and essentially you're living for free by doing this. Now, of course, it's a great way to live below your means, to lower your housing expenses, and essentially live for free. But aside from that, it also only requires you to put down as little as 3.5% down as a down payment. You see, you're able to use an FHA loan to put down just 3.5% down on this property. And not only that, but FHA loans are a lot easier to qualify for because they have lower credit score requirements. They have often higher DTI exceptions, which is debt to income ratio. It's the amount of debt you have versus the amount of income that you make on a monthly basis. So normally, if you're struggling with that and maybe you have some car payments, maybe you have a lot of monthly expenses that kind of raise your DTI, an FHA loan actually gives you a little more leeway versus something like a conventional loan. So there's a lot of pros to having this FHA loan, this low down payment to get started in real estate. Now, one of the cons to an FHA loan is they come with higher closing costs because of what's known as an upfront MIP. Now, MIP stands for mortgage insurance premium. It's basically an extra insurance payment you have to pay when you do less than 20% down. And as part of an FHA loan, you have to do an upfront payment, which is part of your closing costs, actually 1.75% of the loan amount. But with that said, the exception to that is you're able to get up to 6% closing cost contributions, which basically means that if you're buying a property, you can ask the seller to contribute up to 6% of the sales price. So if you're buying a $100,000 property, they could contribute up to $6,000 towards your closing costs, to where essentially you don't even have to pay any closing costs potentially. So although the closing costs can end up being more with an FHA loan, because of the closing cost contribution, you actually have the potential to get into a duplex, triplex, fourplex with less than $10,000 as long as you can do it finding a property under $300,000. I think technically it's like $285,000 if you want to stick to that 3.5% down payment. Plus, as a bonus, you end up getting to live for free, you lower your expenses, which allows you to save up more money to get started investing in the next one. Now, the second way that you can get started investing in real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket is by utilizing short-term rentals. This could be VRBO, this could be Airbnb. The point is you're buying a house as a short-term rental, not a long-term rental, and there's a big reason for this. You see, when you're looking to buy a short-term rental property, most lenders are going to require you only to put down 10% as your down payment, which is only half the amount that most lenders require you to put down for an investment property. Now, in order to put down 10% down on a property, you're technically buying it as a second home. And in order to do it the right way, there are some guidelines that you need to stick to make sure that you're not committing any kind of mortgage fraud, which you definitely want to avoid because that would be a felony on your record. You see, what some people do is they end up buying a property with 10% down to avoid the 20% down payment you need for an investment property. The problem is they often have the intention to hold it as a long-term rental property, which by definition is committing mortgage fraud. So in order to have a short-term rental property, Airbnb, VRBO with 10% down, you have to do things the right way. And these are the guidelines that are set by Fannie Mae in order to do it the right way. And I'm just going to read these out. The property must be occupied by the borrower for some portion of the year. So basically what they're saying is you can't solely use it for investment purposes only. You have to utilize it to some degree as a second home, which is what your original intention is when you bought the property. It must be suitable for for year-round occupancy. That's basically eliminating any kind of long-term investment. Borrower must have exclusive control over the property. Essentially, this just means that no one else can say when and how the property is being used. Must not be a rental property or a timeshare agreement. Again, Airbnb doesn't fall into the category of a rental property. Cannot be subject to any agreements that give a management firm control over the occupancy of the property. As long as you have the final say, that's what ultimately matters. So as long as you intend to occupy the property for at least a short period of time, then you're really meeting the standards of it being a second home to a degree, and you're not using it purely as an investment property. And also keep in mind, you only technically have to stick to this for just 1 year, because after a year, then you can actually convert it into a long-term rental property. And that's my main point with this, is the second home can get you in the door. And maybe that's what your initial priority is to get it as a second home. Maybe you plan on using it for a vacation here or there, and then eventually, maybe long-term, who knows what your plans are, you end up converting it into a long-term rental property because you don't want to utilize it as a vacation property anymore. And so that way it got you in the door for just 10% down. Now, at the end of the day, check with your lender everything I just said, because rules are constantly changing, and what might be a rule today may not be a rule next week. And so you have to double check everything and make sure you are playing by the rules. So if you're able to find a property for under $100,000, then that could be a great way for you to get in with less than $10,000 out of your pocket. Now, it's going to be a requirement, maybe a pain in the neck to do all that, but that is a way that you could do it with less than $10,000. A quick interruption for today's video sponsor. Today's video sponsor is JSA Real Estate Consulting. This is my consulting business where I schedule consultation calls for those interested in starting in real estate investing or taking their real estate investing to the next level. If that's you and you're interested in exploring that, email me at theoutastateinvestor@gmail.com and we can schedule something that works best for you. The third way that you can invest in real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket is utilizing private lending. Now, private lending is basically a way for you to get financing for a real estate investment property without having to go to a bank. You see, you could have your friends, your family members, you could have another investor invest in your deal, and you can get the money directly from that source in order to invest in a property. Now, when it comes to private lending, there's literally no boundaries as far as what you're able to do with the terms. You see, you could have a family member that lends you 100% of the purchase and rehab of a property, and then you pay them back when you either sell or you refinance the property. You could also have an investor that lends you up to 80% of the purchase and rehab, and you have to come up with the other 20% yourself to have some skin in the game. The point is, there's no limitations, and you have the ability to negotiate what works best in your favor. So maybe if you're putting less money out of your pocket towards the deal, maybe you're giving them a higher interest rate on their money. So speaking of which, you actually have flexibility with interest rates and points as well, which if you don't know what points are basically 1% of whatever the loan amount is. So if you're getting a loan for $100,000 and you have 2 points on that, that would be a $2,000 fee. It's a fee. It's not really a down payment that counts towards the loan. It's just a fee for getting the loan in the first place. So you might have a family member that's okay with a 6 to 8% interest rate with maybe little money out of pocket, or you may have an experienced investor that wants to see more like a 12% interest rate with maybe a little skin in the game, 90%, 80% of the purchase price and rehab provided. It just depends on the person that you're dealing with and the relationship you have with them. It can also depend on your experience level too and how much they trust that you're going to give them what you promise you're going to give them. But at the end of the day, the point is this is another way to get started investing in real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket. The fourth way to get started investing in real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket is utilizing seller financing. Now, just like private lending is going to private individuals and they're financing your projects for you, seller financing is going to the seller for your financing. Pretty straightforward, right? So the seller of the property is essentially financing you and essentially being the bank for you. Now, you might wonder, well, why would anybody want to do that? Well, one of the biggest reasons why sellers want to do seller financing is to avoid high capital gains tax, because you see, if they sell their property and they get all that money in one go, they're going to pay a pretty high tax rate depending on what the property is and what their income is. So rather than getting all their money in one go, they can ease their tax burden over a period of time, just gradually getting their profits. Now, very similar to private lending, there's really no restrictions on this. You could put as little down as 0% if you want, and if the seller's okay with that, then that is possible. You could also put as high as 30%, 40% down. down. I mean, there is literally no limitations. The interest rate could be 10%. The interest rate could be 0%. So it can oftentimes make a deal work that maybe didn't work with conventional financing, because let's say they're all about the price point. You might be able to give them the price they want, but maybe you're getting a 0% interest rate, which makes the numbers actually work for you. This is why they call this creative financing, because you're really getting creative in a way that you can solve a problem for the seller. So ultimately though, what this video is about is trying to get into real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket. So by utilizing seller financing, you are able to get into a property with less than $10,000 out of pocket, because there's no limitation on what the lowest amount of down payment you can utilize. Now, the fifth and final way I'm going to go over today about how you can get started investing in real estate with less than $10,000 is by partnering up with somebody. Partnering up can be a great way to invest in real estate when you have little money available to you. You see, there's a couple ways that you can do this. On one hand, you guys could split up the down payment. So instead of having to be responsible for the full 20% down, you could split it up 10%, 10%, or 5%, 15%, however you guys want to. The point is you can still get into real estate with less than 20% down. Now, the other way you can do this is if you're able to add value and you know how to renovate a property, add value to it, maybe do a BRRRR strategy, maybe flip it, make a big profit, and you have the know-how of how to do that, you can bring that to the table, and that is valuable in itself. And then the other partner commits all the money to the table, and so together you guys end up splitting the profits 50-50. Now, by doing it that way, you didn't have to come out of pocket at all. Or maybe you're coming out a little bit out of pocket because maybe you have less experience and it's just a good way for you to get started. There's many different ways that you can do this, but the point is that this is another great way for you to come out less out of pocket. You can have somebody else, and again, if you don't even have the ability to qualify for maybe a conventional loan, maybe your partner does have that ability, and so you can utilize him on the loan. And so there's many ways that you can utilize a partnership to get into real estate investing, and that way at least you're in the game versus having to wait on the sidelines for who knows how many more years. Now, understand that it makes sense when you really know what you're doing that your partner is willing to put in all the money. Now, if you have zero experience and you don't really have the knowledge of how to do anything, then you're really not adding value by just trying to figure it all out on the spot. At the end of the day, you have to really convince your partner that you know what you're doing and that you know how to make money on this property, which is why you are the one bringing the value to the table in that sense. Now, in general, I do prefer to do deals on my own. I think it's a lot cleaner. I think it's better for the long term with the appreciation you get, but ultimately it is a great option to get into real estate with less than $10,000 out of your pocket. And so for that reason, I do still highly recommend doing it as an option to get in with low money down. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you gained some value, just do me a favor, take a second out of your time and smash that like button. And if you haven't already done so, definitely subscribe and hit that notification bell to watch more content like this. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Finally, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Out of State Investor. And before you guys go, there's two videos I'm going to highly recommend you check out. First of all is how to buy a fixer-upper the right way. If you want to add value to a partnership, or you want to show your private lender how are you going to pay him back, you want to know how to buy a fixer-upper the right way. Now, in addition to that, the other thing I highly recommend you check out is how much it costs to buy a rental property. That's another important thing you're going to want to know as you continue to look to scale your real estate portfolio. So check those two videos out, and with that said, I'll see you guys on the next one.